In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Islam. During our last program in this series, The World of the Quran, we looked at some aspects of the Prophet's life. This was essential because when one reviews the performance of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, as a religious leader, and studies the Quran closely as the document of his revelationary experience, one cannot fail to perceive that an inner unity and an unmistakable sense of direction are obvious in the Prophet's activities and the guidance of the Quran. This by no means implies that Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was the author of the Quran, a charge too often brought by non-Muslims. Neither should it appear that since God spoke to Muhammad through the agency of an angel or through wahy, or an Arabic word which means inspiration, that he himself is the object of worship. Many non-Muslims who know little about Islam and Muslims think that Muhammad is the object of worship in Islam. No better words have summarily addressed this issue than that of Abu Bakr, the Prophet's closest companion and the first elected caliph of Muslims, who admonished the grieving community struck by disbelief on hearing the news of the death of the Prophet, that for those who worshipped Muhammad, Muhammad is dead, and for those who worshipped God, God is alive and eternal. In this program, we will discuss the structure of the Quran.
شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان.
What is so unique about Ramadan, the month of fasting? How does fasting in Islam differ from fasting in other religions?
Fasting and abstinence were part of Jewish life. They were also taken as part of the Christian life.
The Islamic Information Service is proud to present a video special, Ramadan and Fasting.
You said this was the holy month, the Ramadan, and I was just wondering, what is that? What is it? What do you do?
Join Islamic scholars and leaders as they provide a contemporary perspective on this important pillar of Islam. A must for any video collection, this special explores the fast, from the Quran to nutrition to spirituality to the format of the fast. Order your copy of Ramadan and Fasting today.
One way to grab the significance of the Quran is to understand that the Quran corresponds more readily to the person of Christ rather than the Bible. For it's Christ who is for the Christians the revelation of God. And what corresponds in the Islamic scheme to the Bible, the record of revelation, is the tradition or hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him.
The New Testament is much more comparable to the hadith because it tells about Jesus and reports his sayings, and then we have the collection of letters. For the Christian, of course, as for the pious Jew, the Bible is inspired word as is the Quran, but it's not possible phenomenologically to compare these two because the Bible is of a different quality. As I said, it's rather comparable to the hadith.
The format of the Bible, which has been arranged, rearranged, edited, and re-edited throughout the centuries, is compiled under various chapters according to the historical events, prophecies, or personalities. This storybook style is not present in the Quran, and thus its meaning may not be easily accessible to someone who is used to the style and format of the Old and New Testaments.
Sometimes it becomes difficult for especially somebody who's reading the Quran into English language, and one does not fully grasp the style of the Quran, because the Quranic style is not plain prose. It is not like you're reading a storybook or you're reading even a serious book in the prose. It has prose and poetry both. So you have to somehow stop, reflect, go back to the same verse again and again, read it 2 or 3 times. Then you will be able to get it. And then also see the connection between the one that you read and the one that is following. And when you read it 2 or 3 times, then you see the connection. And then it will give you a more meaning. And really, the more you read it, the more it will reveal itself to you. It is a book about which the Prophet said, "La tanqadi ajaibu," its marvels will never end. It continuously explains itself more and more to the person.
There's also an important distinction between the final composition of the Quran and the Bible. The Bible was written over a period of 1,000 years by many different people in different places. The Hebrew Bible was officially closed in the year of 90 of the Common Era, and the New Testament was canonized by the end of the 4th century of the Common Era. In each case, several centuries after the persons and events described in their respective testaments. In contrast, the Quran was revealed to one person, the Prophet Muhammad, over a period of 23 years, starting in Mecca on the Night of Power during the month of Ramadan in the year 610 of the Common Era with the word recite, and ending shortly before his death in the city of Medina in the year 632 of the Common Era.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful.
اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا.
This day have I perfected your religion for you, and completed my favor unto you, and have chosen for you as religion al-Islam.
Soon after his death, the first Caliph, Abu Bakr, collected all of the pieces of revelation authenticated by the Prophet before he died into one document. At this time, the frontiers of the Islamic State were rapidly expanding, and this one copy evolved into several versions as it traveled to Damascus, Busra, and parts of Iraq and Iran. Though the different versions of the Quran only represented dialectical variation, these also were eliminated when the third Caliph, Osman, decided to standardize the Quran. With the help of scores of the Prophet's companions who had already memorized the Quran during his lifetime, he retained the standard Qurayshi dialect and eliminated the minor dialectic variations. Thus, within 20 years of the Prophet's death, the Quran was canonized into its present form. It was at that time, as well, that the numbering, titling, and ordering of the chapters of the Quran was achieved. This became the authorized version and has remained unaltered and unadulterated to this day. In fact, even for translations of the Quran in other languages, the original Arabic text exists side by side, so that if there are translatory errors, a person familiar with the Quranic Arabic will be easily able to remedy this.
One good thing about Quran is, unlike Bible, that one Bible, if you give, other Bible will have different system or the difference in verses. So you have to explain which version you are talking about. Some verses are missing from the same thing. Fortunately, in the case of the Quran, that's not the case. And a Quran which is given in China or Japan or Korea or anywhere, it is all the same. So in this way, the material is very well organized.
It may be difficult for many of us to understand the meaning or concept of a sacred language and the function it performs in certain religions. In Christianity, for instance, there is no sacred language. Latin, being used in the Catholic Church as a liturgical language, is not a sacred one. Arabic is a sacred language as God has chosen it as his instrument of communication. The form of the Quran is the Arabic language which, religiously speaking, is inseparable from the Quran. It is an integral part of the Quranic revelation, whose very sounds and utterances play a role in the ritual acts of Islam. Though it is not at all necessary to know Arabic well to be a Muslim, it is necessary as a minimum to know the Quranic verses which play so important a role in the acts of worship. This is why Muslims, the majority of whom are non-Arabs, are taught not spoken Arabic, but the Quranic Arabic, which forms a part of basic religious education throughout the Muslim world, and which aids in the reading and understanding of the Quran.
There is definitely such a thing as a sacred language. We must understand, since we're now speaking English, that there is a difference between a liturgical language and a sacred language. This is oftentimes confused by many people. Every revelation from heaven has both a content and a container. Not only is the content divine, but also the container is divine. And many of the heterodox modern religious movements have gone astray precisely because they have accepted the divinity of the content but not the container. And therefore they've broken the forms in the name of some higher ideal, which then is lost, because nothing exists in this world without a container. You cannot pour water unless you have a container into which you pour it. In the case of Islam, the word was the Quran. It was, in a sense, the Prophet received it. But the Prophet was not the container. It's not the body of the Prophet that is the container. Of course, something of the soul of the Prophet is in the Quran, as we know, but that is invisible. Therefore, it is the language in which the Quran was revealed that is the container of the sacred message. And therefore, the sacredness of the Arabic language. You have exactly the same situation in Judaism with Hebrew. You have it in Hinduism with Sanskrit. And outside of the Abrahamic world, Buddhism is like Christianity, where there was the body of the Buddha, his very figure, that was the container. And that of the enlightenment, which for them is like revelation in the Abrahamic context. And that is why, again, the Buddha image, the statue of the Buddha, is so important in Buddhism. But in Hinduism, it is Sanskrit. And in Islam, it is Arabic. That is why, whether you are a Persian or a Turk or a Malay or anybody else, God does not ask you to know Arabic well. It would have been impossible, although Islam would not have spread. But He does ask you to know enough Arabic sentences to be able to memorize certain verses of the Quran to repeat in the prayers. And the prayers will not be accepted except in Arabic. And also why the divine names, the spiritual power that they have, is contained in the very pronunciation of these names in Arabic, the very sound system. Like we say Allah, that is different than if you say Khuda in Persian, which is my mother tongue. And I can, praying at night, say, Ya Khuda, in karo bokun, un karo bokun, please do this for me or that for me. But when I say my prayers, or when I want to invoke the divine name, in a technical sense of dhikr, of invocation, I have to use the Arabic. And that's what a sacred language is.
A sacred language is profound in depth and usually little developed on the surface, as can be seen in Quranic Arabic. Every word carries a world of meaning within itself, and there's never a complete horizontal and didactic explanation of its content. In other words, it possesses an inner dimension which no amount of literal and philosophical analysis can reveal. And it is precisely this aspect of the Quran that is least known in the outside world.
The purpose of the Quran is that the Quran should be understood. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. The Quran says, don't they reflect on the Quran? Don't understand the Quran? So Quran should be understood properly, and for this purpose we should emphasize that people should learn the Arabic language. The more the people will learn the Arabic language, the better, because then they will be in contact with the Quran directly, and this is really Quran will open up, will give you much more if you understand the Quran in its own language. But those who cannot spend that much time and have some difficulty in learning the Arabic language, I think the second important thing for them is to read the Quran in translations, in good translations and good explanations. But we must always be in touch with the Quran.
The Quran is divided into 114 chapters of unequal length. There are 6,616 verses, 77,934 words, and 323,671 letters in this book, which is approximately 4/5 the length of the New Testament. The word surah, though commonly translated as chapter, really means step or graduation by which the believer ascends closer to God. Ayah, though understood as a verse, actually means a sign pointing to God's revelation of wisdom and mercy. The ayahs or verses are also of unequal length, but usually have a rhyming end and also have a certain meter, both qualities which create a profound auditory impression and add to the listening pleasure. Each surah, except number 9, Surah Al-Tawbah, which begins with the invocation Bismillahir-Rahman-Ir-Rahim, which means, in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful.
الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Praise be to Allah, Lord of the worlds.
الرحمن الرحيم.
The Beneficent, the Merciful.
مالك يوم الدين.
Owner of the Day of Judgment.
إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين.
Thee alone we worship. Thee alone we ask for help.
اهدنا الصراط المستقيم.
Show us the straight path.
صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
The path of those whom thou hast favored, not the path of those who earn thine anger, nor of those who go astray.
A chapter title usually refers to the theme of the chapter or surah, or to a word or phrase which identifies its uniqueness. Some titles are oblique. For instance, the cow, the longest surah in Quran, has only about 10 verses which discuss Moses' decision to sacrifice this animal. Another surah, the women, devotes most of its verses to subjects dealing with marriage, divorce, and the general status of women.
Many people have pointed out that there are contradictions in the Bible. However, this does not deter Christian believers from believing in the Bible. With the Quran, you don't have this, the analog to this you don't have in the Quran. Because the Quran was put together during the Prophet's own lifetime, and then the arrangement that we have, this dates from the third caliph of Islam, and all the scholars of both the West and the East are agreed that the text of the Quran has undergone no change. Ever since the Prophet's days, it is what it has been. Therefore, that part of that analog of the biblical criticism doesn't exist, cannot exist in Islam. What should exist, I think, is that the Muslims and non-Muslims also, but particularly Muslims, should concentrate more on the background of the Quran in order to understand its proper meaning.
Over the years, attempts have been made by scholars to arrange the chapters according to chronology and geography. Since the Quran was a response to what was happening in the Prophet's life, an understanding of chronology of events and revelation, though helpful, is extremely difficult. It is impossible to arrange the Quran on the basis thereof. Geographically, the Prophet's life evolved mainly in the cities of Mecca, where the call came to him, and Medina, where he migrated as a result of being persecuted for his beliefs, and where he established the first Islamic state. Revelation occurred in Mecca and Medina, and therefore the Meccan and Medinian verses are found in many different surahs and several parts of the Quran. The Meccan passages tend to deal with insistence on monotheism and socioeconomic justice, whereas the Medinian verses are replete with principles of statehood, legislation, and arbitration, reflecting problems associated with the establishment of the first Islamic community. Thus, in its final compilation, the Quran is arranged in accordance with the inner requirements of its message as a whole, and not in the chronological order in which the individual surahs or passages were revealed.
From Los Angeles to Boston, the Muslim call to prayer is being heard. Now, for the first time on home video, you can have the complete story of what is often called the fastest growing religion in the United States, Islam in America. This video takes you beyond the stereotypes and into the homes and daily lives of American Muslims.
Come on, Faduda.
You see how the 5 pillars of Islam are actually practiced in 5 American cities, from Cedar Rapids, Iowa and Los Angeles to Houston and Toledo and Quincy, Massachusetts. This award-winning video was produced by the respected Christian Science Monitor, It has won praise from Muslims as a clear and accurate introduction to Islam. To order your copy of Islam in America, please call the 800 number shown on your screen. Call now for Islam in America.
Islam Tape of the Month Club. By joining Islam Tape of the Month Club, you will receive every month a VHS video cassette containing the 4 most recently aired Islam programs. Minimum subscription period is 6 months. Subscribe now by calling the toll-free number you see on your screen. Join now and bring Islam into your home, to your family and children. Call now and join.
شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان.
What is so unique about Ramadan, the month of fasting? How does fasting in Islam differ from fasting in other religions?
Fasting and abstinence were part of Jewish life. They were also taken as part of the Christian life.
The Islamic Information Service is proud to present a video special, Ramadan and Fasting.
You said this was the holy month, the Ramadan, and I was just wondering, what is that? What is it? What do you do?
Join Islamic scholars and leaders as they provide a contemporary perspective on this important pillar of Islam. A must for any video collection, this special explores the fast, from the Quran to nutrition to spirituality to the format of the fast. Order your copy of Ramadan and Fasting today.
From the earlier part of Islamic history, 2 artistic traditions evolved around the Quran. One, that of recitation of the Quran, and the other, the art of calligraphy. Schools of Quranic recitation still train people in this art, and all Muslims, whether they understand Arabic or not, sit and enjoy these performances at their mosque or at home reverently. Similarly, since in Islam there has been a prohibition against anthropomorphic art, Muslims excelled in the art of calligraphy and took special pride in adorning the Book of God with beautiful script and decorations, with inlaying of gold.
اهدنا الصراط المستقيم اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين.
The Quran, being like a world, is also a multiplicity in its chapters and verses, words and letters. It is made of a world of ideas and formulae, and though it presents itself as the world, it is a world in which there is no differentiation, but essentially integration and unification. The Quran is a guide for the world. It brings that which humans need to know in order to relate themselves to God as His servants. Join us next week as we explore further the world of the Quran. Assalamu alaikum.